Gnocchi with lamb ragu. Whenever I go to an Italian restaurant and it's on the menu, I have to order it. So I'm going to show you how to make it at home. And what I've just been doing is sealing off my lamb. Now I've got 1.5 kilos of lamb shoulder that I've asked my butcher to dice. We want lamb shoulder because it's a secondary cut. It's going to cook long and slow, and it's going to almost fall apart after it's been cooked. And you can see there's enough oil in there to start cooking our vegetables. So classic stew, onions go in next, along with some celery. And you can see I've chopped everything really fine, particularly the celery and the carrot, because it's going to give this a lovely sweetness. The carrot, what I've done is placed it in a food processor, so it's super, super fine. You could also grate it. I've got this thing with carrot. I don't like big chunks of it in my stews. I don't want it to be a dominant visual aspect of the dish. I want it to be all about the red sauce and the lamb. Just really scrape down the base of that pan there because that's flavour. And we want to develop the flavour in this stew. I'll also add a pinch of salt and some pepper. And now just grab a wooden spoon and cook this down just on a low heat, just so it starts to sweat and soften. To this, I'll add some garlic. I've just roughly chopped some garlic. Okay, while that's softening, let's prepare our herbs. Hard herbs go so well with lamb. So I have a combination of thyme, sage and bay leaves. And you can throw them straight in, but then you've got to find them afterwards. So what I like to do is just grab myself a little bit of string and bunch it together, tie it around, and that way at the end we can just fish it out. All right, we'll place that into the pot. And this is looking quite good now, so we can add some tomato paste, about a tablespoon, and just cook that off for a moment before we add the next ingredient. This is also going to help thicken our sauce. For some other liquids that go so nicely with our lamb, some red wine. So some full-bodied red wine like a Shiraz. Cabernet Sauvignon is also good for cooking. And we want that to bubble away. And once that starts to bubble, we can add some red wine vinegar. This is my trick. I love the red wine vinegar because it cuts through the fattiness of the lamb. So about 1/4 cup of red wine vinegar. And that's looking like a fantastic base for our stew. Next, tomatoes. 2 cans of really good quality peeled tomatoes here, and we'll place that in there. You could also use some crushed tomatoes or some passata. And just with your wooden spoon, break up the tomatoes and give that a really good stir. Now the tomatoes, there's quite a lot there, so we need to season this correctly. A good pinch of salt. And we don't want to waste any tomatoes. So I've got 2 cups of beef stock here. I'll just add a little just to clean out that bowl. You could also do this with the cans that you're using. Pour that in, along with the remaining stock. And usually if I was doing just a classic ragu with mince, I probably wouldn't add that stock. But because I've got cubes of meat and it's going to take time to cook, you need that extra liquid in here. All right, almost done. All of this meat can go back in. So I'm just going to carefully pour it in. All of those juices, it's a must because there's so much flavour in there. You can see I'm not giving you the recipe for a small batch. This is a large batch. In fact, we'll use half of this for our gnocchi. The rest of it, keep it in the freezer. It's fantastic for when you want a really quick dinner. All right, grab a lid, and that's going to gently cook for 2 hours. Well, while that cooks, we can get on to our gnocchi. I love making gnocchi at home. It takes a bit of practice to get it right. There are a few little critical points with it. I went to Tuscany a few years ago and I learnt it and I made it over and over again so I can perfect the skill. So under here, I have my potatoes. Now I'm using large Desiree potatoes for this. Different recipes call for different potatoes and not every potato is equal, but I find they're an all-purpose potato and they're reliable. So I have about 1.5 kilograms of potatoes. I like to steam them so there's less water. Water is the enemy of gnocchi because you don't want it to be stodgy. You also want to steam them in their skins. Now that's the trick. So we'll just peel them and you can notice that they're still hot. So once you've done that, you're going to have to get yourself one of these. This is a ricer. So just on a nice clean board, we're going to place our potatoes into our ricer, and this is essentially going to mash it or crumble our potatoes for our gnocchi. If you don't have one of these, what I recommend is grabbing a coarse grater, like one of those box graters, and just grating the potatoes. You'll also get a great result. So I'm just going to slowly rice these potatoes. All right, the potatoes have been riced, so now we're just going to spread them out, make a little hole in the centre, and then we're going to add the flour. Now, I like to use Tipo 00 flour for this, and the reason I use Tipo 00 is because it's much finer, so we're going to get a lighter gnocchi. So I'm going to measure out 1 cup of the Tipo 00 flour, and we're just going to sprinkle that over our potatoes. Now, I start with half a cup, mix it in, add a little more, and we'll see the consistency of this. You also don't want to overwork your gnocchi, so have everything ready to go and then you can concentrate on the kneading. So a few more ingredients to this. I use 1 egg and 1 egg yolk for richness. A really good pinch of salt. You've got to season your gnocchi. I like the flavour of nutmeg, not only for the gnocchi, but nutmeg goes nicely with the lamb too, so it's a perfect pairing. And some parmesan. So we'll just freshly grate some parmesan over the top. And that's it. It's all you need for your gnocchi. And now it's all about a light touch. So I'll start with a little fork, break those eggs and just give them a whisk in the centre. And then just start stirring in the mash, bringing that in, keep stirring. And when it starts to get sticky like this, we can start bringing it in, pressing it together. What we're looking for is it to not stick on the board, come together nicely and be like a smooth dough. Now I can tell that this needs a lot more of our Tipo 00, so another half cup measure, and then we'll just spread it out again and a little bit more of that flour. Okay, it's always better to add less. I'll reserve a little bit more and then keep kneading. And once I've got the perfect consistency, then I'm just going to divide this mixture and roll it into cylinders. Okay, this gnocchi is looking good. I've just rolled it out and now we can start forming the shape. Now, I keep it super simple. I'm just using a little cutter here to cut them into its shape. If you like, you can use that special gnocchi tool just to put little indents into it so it grabs the sauce. I actually kind of like that really home style look. And what I do is just pinch it on the side like this, and then we've got our beautiful gnocchi. That then goes onto a tray. Now, this is a little trick that I learned from my Italian friends. You don't want to start forming all of your gnocchi before you test at least a couple of them. You want to test that there's enough flour in there so it doesn't fall apart, and also you want to taste it just to make sure that the seasoning is correct. And then in with a few of our gnocchi. It should fall to the bottom and you want to wait a moment. If it does come up to the top and it holds its shape, then you know you've got perfect gnocchi. So you'll see now it starts to come up. When they come up to the surface, just leave it a little longer so that flour cooks out. But they're looking really good to me. See how they're not falling apart? They're holding their shape. I can just pinch them. I know that they're right, and I'll have a taste. Perfect. I've nailed it. So you've got that sense of security that all your gnocchi are going to be fantastic. So I'm going to make a load of this, pop them onto trays, into the fridge, and all we need to do now is wait for that delicious lamb ragu to finish cooking. Okay, the gnocchis are ready to go in the water. So you need to season the water, so a good pinch of salt. And you can see that the water's not rapidly boiling. So we just want to pop them in. And once they do come up to the surface, just cook them for a further minute. So I'm just going to make enough for one portion. Okay. Now, let's have a look at this gorgeous lamb ragu. It's been cooking for 2 hours. It's fallen apart. So I'll just take the bouquet garni out. It's done its job. And give that a stir. You can see how it's starting to shred just naturally. Now, the best way to serve your gnocchi is to fold it through this mixture. So I've just got a pan, it's just much easier to do. So I like to add just a bit. I'm gonna make a few portions here. So we'll add a few spoonfuls, and then we'll use a slotted spoon to just grab our beautiful little gnocchis. They've come to the surface, and I do want some of that water to go into the sauce. This is the best way to do it, just so we fold it all together. And the last few little gnocchis, you can see that I made them quite small, but they do swell up a lot in the actual water. Give that a bit of a toss, just a really gentle one, you don't want to break up. And a little Parmesan cheese in there too. Again, just tossing that, and we'll plate that up. Oh, geez, this looks good. So, nice wide, shallow bowl into the center. And you want a good amount of sauce to gnocchi for this. If you're a huge Parmesan fan like I am, a little extra over the top, and maybe some freshly cracked pepper. And that right there is a bowl of love. Gnocchi with lamb ragu, must have a taste. They just almost dissolve in your mouth. They're that soft. And that lamb ragu, do what I've done there, make a big batch of it, because you're gonna wanna do this recipe over and over again.